Yes, so recording has started.
So, Ritu, you are supposed to start the proceedings by saying, about, and then I introduce Somu, and then Somu starts.
No, actually, okay, sure. So, hi guys, today the session is being taken by Anirban and Somuda, and they are going to talk about their learnings from 2 decades of Coca-Cola experience and multi-industry insight. And this talk is from 5 to 6 p.m. So, Anirban sir, can I request you to start?
Yeah. So, uh, I mean, I'm really honored that Somu, asked me to be the moderator of this talk. Somu is an extremely dear friend for whom I also have a lot of respect. I obviously haven't read his introduction that was circulated, so I'm going to make my own introduction. So what I remember from about Somu from our Irma days, that extremely hardworking person, and he had a never give up attitude to life. I mean, like when we did our assignments together, even when the assignment was, let's say, about I think at a A level, or he wanted us to spend another 2 hours from 2 o'clock at night onwards to get it to an A plus level. He was never satisfied with anything less than excellence. Extremely hardworking person, extremely outstanding people skills. He always knew what the other person wanted. And that has reflected in his career progress. Has done extremely well. He was with GCMMF, then he moved to Coke, and he has had 2 decades of experience in Coke, and served in diverse countries. One of the things, I mean, like, of organizations like Coke, is that you don't survive there for long if you are flaky. I mean, like, if you are flaky, maybe you'll survive at the most probably 3 years, at the most four if you're really lucky, but not for 2 decades, because surviving every year becomes even that more difficult, because you keep getting tested. So the fact that Sumu has survived more than 2 decades in Coke tells us how sound he is. The other thing which I just want to highlight is that, I mean, Sumu is just multi-talented. Uh, it is very difficult to do new things after a certain age, and Sumu has succeeded there. He has now picked up academics, and he has just completed his master's in research from Australia. And uh, I mean, of course, we are right now, it's a very small group of 11 people. And, I mean, like, the interesting thing about, I would say international education, and I'm talking about places like Australia or UK or US or Europe, is that, people take their education very seriously. It's not like, I mean, like in India, as you say, you just kind of work for 2 days and you complete your papers. It's not like that there. There is no friends. I mean, your professor is not your friend. He evaluates you as rigorously as everyone, and a degree. I mean, I know I'm being a little, you can say, I mean, how should I say? I mean, like, being subservient to the Western world, but master's degrees in from most universities are serious business. So the fact that Somu has completed it, I have a lot of respect for him, and I think this is just the beginning of his academic journey. So, summary of Somu, I mean, like, outstanding executive, varied experience across the globe, various countries, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Australia, Indonesia, Timor, East Timor. I mean, just outstanding. GCMMF, and I mean, like, this was not. I mean, like, he showed all these qualities in Irma. So not a surprise at all what he has achieved. His academic excellence that he has demonstrated is a surprise, because at this stage of our life, anybody doing a serious research degree is actually surprised. So that has been surprising for me. I'm sure the Somu will have a lot of surprises for us. I could talk another 20 minutes about Somu, but I don't think that's what I mean. I'm sure that's even that would be interesting. But since this is not the agenda of this talk, I leave it here. Somu, over to you. Some ground rules about this discussion. Discussion among friends, right? No question is unimportant. Uh, Feel free to interrupt. See this hand. I mean, I'm using Zoom after a very long time. I don't know if there is this hand thing in Zoom, but just feel free to interrupt and say, Somu, I have a question. And even if Somu is talking, just interrupt him and ask the question. And I'll try, and if there are questions on chat, I'll keep kind of noting it down and I'll ask Somu at some point of time. And Ritesh, since you are more experienced on the platform, is there this hand thing where you can say that you want to ask a question or something like that,
Yeah,
which is
there is.
there in
People
Teams?
There,
can raise their hands. Yes, here.
there
It's
is,
There,
it's an
that
option.
there
it's
is,
an
there
option.
is.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm not seeing that here. Where is that?
Wait, I'll just guide you to it.
It's a ribbon on the
It's
back.
it's in reactions, in
Yeah.
the on the bottom of the
No.
panel, or if you there is an option called reactions. If you click that, there's an option called raise hands.
Okay.
You can see my hand
Okay.
raised.
Oh,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. But since I'm sharing the screen, I think that's the issue. I'm not able to
yes,
see
if
that
you're
actually.
sharing the screen, you can't see it. Someone who's not sharing the
Yeah.
screen can only see it.
Okay,
So
good.
maybe
Somu, so
yeah.
you're not sharing the screen, so you can see the reactions and you can kind of just interrupt yourself and ask the person to ask a question. Yeah. I'll not be able to see those. So Somu, over to you. Take it away.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much. You don't stop embarrassing me. But I wished, you were half as kind as you are today during my IRMA days. Perhaps that would have helped in many, many other areas. On a serious note, guys, thank you very much to Ritu, to Ritesh, to the IAA office bearers for giving me this opportunity. I think it's always a pleasure to reconnect with the alma mater, with the IRMANs. Uh, Before I move further, it is a serious note that I must acknowledge and congratulate you guys, Ritesh and the team, for this innovative initiative. You guys are the champions in creating a very wealthy repository. So, very well done. Please give yourselves a round of applause. You deserve it fully. Uh, Over the last week, once this notification was posted, I did receive several inquiries about this talk, including from my seniors, and that kind of made me a little bit reflective. And this is about IRMA and Federation, my first company where I spent 4.5 years, and immediately after we graduated. So one of the issues in 1993, all the leading business magazines, Business World and Business India, carried the caption leveraging levers. So that was about how Unilever was producing, the talent for the corporate world. Today, with GCMF Federation, Amul's marketing body as it is more popularly known, achieving the level of exceptional success and the phenomenal growth, more than a 70,000 crore company, which is India's largest FMCG and the world's biggest dairy cooperative. I must acknowledge the contribution of IRMA and the Federation guys, not only in creating impact and contribution to multiple industries, but also to all the three sectors. So my gratitude remains. I just wanted to very quickly capture the expectation, but I don't see much scope of doing it. But Ritesh, can I ask you a question that from your 44 previous talks, what is the percentage of the young Irmans, let's say PRM 30 and onwards, watching it?
I think some of the around 20%, 20 to 25% uh, attendance is from say 30 onwards. And recently, in the last few talks, there is something very interesting. I have seen this percentage go up. So, participants from the latest batch who are still pursuing their uh, course in IRMA, I've seen them participating. So, uh, it's an encouraging sign that they're very keen to listen what the alumni have to share. But to answer your question, typically say 20 to 25%.
Yeah, understood. I
So I
think,
just want to add here,
yeah,
as I have mentioned to you, that, this has archival value. So, this is going to stay forever on YouTube, and you never know who looks at it, when, where. So, you could just kind of consider that aspect as you kind of start speaking.
no, got it. Understood. I think that gives me a pretty decent understanding of
Mm.
the usage and the audience. I will take the liberty of very quickly recalibrating, because initially we did speak about talking a little bit technical, which was definitely consumer strategy, which was RGM, revenue growth management, and which was your SGM, sustainable business growth. I think, instead of trying to be too ambitious, I would just
Mm.
stick to the consumer strategy, because whether you call it consumer or the end user, irrespective of an overtly commercial transaction, stated or unstated, that is something that will relate very well across all the three sectors, for all the
Mm.
industries. Okay, so let me try make an attempt to do some
S-
justice on just talking about the consumer strategy part of it.
So just a minute. I think Ritu, somebody had a question. Ritu, I think from IRMA Alumni Associations. There was somebody raised the hand. Do you want to add something here?
Yes, I just wanted to add to what Ritesh said. No matter how many people join this chat and the conversation, the archival value is too high. And there are chats that we also refer in our subgroups to other people and say, go refer to that chat and hear it. You might find some value at a later date. So it just goes down the history of everything that you say today.
Yeah, all right. No, thanks. So, I'll just quickly redefine the purpose of this talk, subsequent to my discussions with Ritesh and Anirban. The purpose is to explain or share a perspective of, or maybe a success story with which most of the Earmans can relate to. Okay. So, uh, before I get into an example, which I think I have pointed out already and it's in my presentation, let me quickly ask Anirban to move to the next slide, which is a reflection from Dalai Lama. So this might sound a little bit ironical here, the speaker himself talking about this, but then it is only to reinstate that I am mindful not to make it a monologue, I think, which was very rightly pointed out by Anirban as well. So the example that I'm going to quote is about understanding consumers. The example that I'm going to quote is about a success story which relates to consumer preference, to the consumer choice, the substitution, the brand scores, essentially, the ways to connect the consumer connect and to strengthen the consumer connect rather. And this is an example from a state which all Irmans can relate with. So this is an example of Coca-Cola in Gujarat. This example relates back to 2021, 22. So that way, a little bit, dated. but then it's still relevant. It's still relevant because of the intrinsic value. It's still relevant because it talks about cutting across the trap, getting uncluttered, noise out, and getting into the core focus. So, in summary, this is about what is being now technically called about the affordability strategy, or the rupees 5 initiative, which was conceived and given birth in Gujarat, and way back in 2021, when I just moved in from the Bihar operations to take over the Gujarat as the general
Oh,
manager for
not
Coca-Cola Gujarat.
2021, much earlier, 2001 probably.
Sorry. Yeah, my mistake. Yeah, you were right. So I
And
meant
should I go to the
to,
next slide?
yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, Anirban. Thanks for correcting. And yeah, I see Sanjeev joining as well, another batchmate. Uh, so look, I mean, we were kind of busy trying to understand and a little bit intellectualize about the consumers of Ahmedabad, relating with Munafa, as you call it, Ahmedabadi Munafa, value for money oriented, Surat consumer, who is more flashy, driven by cosmopolitan city sleeker kind of orientation. But truly speaking, what one realized is the consumer is requiring a basic drink to quench her or his thirst, a basic experience which will be satisfying enough to create a repeat, an experience that will allow the consumer to spread the joy, the refreshment, in special occasions, in togetherness, in moments of happiness. So that is exactly what was in search, and that is what was to be driven. Now, this was mind you, this was in a state which is known for its local entrepreneurship. So in Saurashtra, which had a potential of 35% contribution to whole of Gujarat's, business, had boutique bottling units in its backyard kind of operations, manually operated. They were selling products at less than 50% of what Coca-Cola had priced, what our pricing was. So it was a very, very difficult task to deliver the numbers. On top of it, the expectation of the bottling company, the Coca-Cola company, Hindustan Beverages, was very steep, because the first Kobo company owned bottling operations got commissioned in between Nadiad and Ahmedabad, a place called Goblech, for catering to whole of Gujarat. And that was a massive investment on a 54-acre land. So you can imagine the pressure, not only to deliver the operating profits, but also to justify all the financial ratios like ROCE and ROE. To add on to it, competition definitely had a very clear cut advantage, as in they had a plant in Rajkot. So instead of you know incurring freight cost, which was the case for us, and I still remember it was about 2 rupees 60 paisa during those days per physical case, they would just use it for disruptive tactical actions in gaining short-term immediate volumes through the HVOs, called high volume outlets. The challenges did not stop it, because within 10 days of my arriving and taking over charge of the Gujarat operations, we had one of the worst earthquakes, which from memory I think was on 26th of January 2001, right? Uh,
Right.
so this is what the context was in terms of the overall beverage landscape, the competitive space, the internal requirement of the bottling company, and also PCCC, which is the Coca-Cola company, Atlanta, them having their own mandate of delivering unit case volumes, which is governed through KPIs and objectives, which may or may not be all the time aligned with the bottler. So quite a complex kind of a context, just to state. So clearly, in terms of defined asks, the ask were to recruit new consumers. The ask was to have more incidence and frequency of consumption. The ask was to not only protect the risk of substitution of the regular and the occasional consumers, but to multiply it. Gujarat, as it is today, I was reading an article yesterday wherein, I guess, from infographics, I think the affluence is still about 33% higher than the Indian average. I don't recall the exact figure way back in 2001, but Gujarat used to be among the top three affluent states of India. And this kind of a concern of soft volume, of depressing volume, was existing in Gujarat. So you can imagine what would be the case in rest of the country. So yeah, and of course, the pressure on the operating manager was also to deliver uh, uh, high brand score defined through equity numbers, preference scores, uh, and when the competition was all full on with disruptive moves and local, Saurashtra led cheap products proliferation and mushrooming of manual bottling operations. Before I come to what,
So, since
yeah.
there's a break, so Subbu is asking this question: did your predecessor's performance matter? I mean, is this a question that you want to take now or later?
Yeah. No, 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 that's fine. So predecessor's performance in that very particular operation in Gujarat, right? And I think
Mhm.
Anirban, without knowing micro details, he was pretty right. So when Coke Atlanta uh, made that kind of an investment, and let me not disclose the number. I mean, I still remember it, but look, there were certain forecasts, certain projections about India, the big story, the population, and Excel sheet, so many transactions by so many people, and over 3 years, this will be so much volume. So all of that went out of the window. So four GMs, I don't know whether they moved on or they lost their jobs, whatever happened, but they changed in about 2.5 to 3 years' time, Subbu, to answer your question. The first one being an expat, and the three subsequent one were, local national Indian folks. Was Subbu's question related to any particular initiative by my predecessors, or
Anyway,
can't
let's carry
Subbu
on. If he has
can't
a
Subbu
follow-up
speak?
question,
Can't Subbu unmute and speak?
no, it's okay. I mean, I think just carry on. When if people want to interrupt, I mean, we have given them, the permission to interrupt. And if they want to ask a question on chat, I will answer it on their behalf. I
All
think just
right.
carry on, Somo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm happy to get back later as well to take
yeah,
Subbu's question.
yeah.
So in brief, this is what the ask was, and let's move on to the next slide, anyone, if you may,
Yeah,
to talk
just
about
a minute. I'm
the
kind of,
results.
just a minute. I'm kind of, yeah. Oh, 1 minute. I'm
The very
kind of,
next slide, actually.
yeah. Oh, okay. I know what I have to do. What? Just a minute.
No, you went back, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Is this ask? We are at result,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
Okay.
look, I mean, the immediate results were pretty encouraging. So as
Mm-hmm.
I said, so Rashtra, which was close to 35% of the total state volume, that recorded a three-digit growth, three-digit
Mm-hmm.
growth on a soft base, of course. So don't get misled by that. But what was more healthy signs were steady increase in transaction from every market, Rajkot, Bhuj, Gandhidham, Jamnagar, remote, urban, the rural remotes, practically from all of them.
Interrupting you here, what was the actions that you took? I mean, you told us the challenge and you're telling us the result, but what were the actions that were taken that resulted in this? Can you, I mean, maybe I missed it out, or maybe you didn't kind
No,
of
no,
talk
no.
about.
So that was done intentionally. So just to show, uh, what the results were, and then irrespective, I can come either way. If you want to
Okay.
hear the
Yeah.
interventions now, I
Yeah,
can talk
yeah.
about it.
Maybe that will be better because then
All
it's
right.
easier to really.
No, so all right. So see, look, I mean, the actions that were taken is the whole OBPPC structure, the architecture, the consumer architecture was revamped. We recalibrated the pricing. When we
Mhm.
recalibrated the pricing, the whole portfolio has to be reoriented, right? Most importantly, the profit mix has to be recalculated as a thumb rule, and I think it would still
Mhm.
hold good today. So we had identified the core pack, the recruitment pack, the transaction pack as the 200 ml glass bottle RGB.
Mhm.
So we dropped the price from 7 rupee to 5 rupees. So that is about 2 rupees. Call it about a
Mhm.
30% reduction in MRP. Given the sales tax, MRP, and all of that,
Mhm.
the retailer margin and all of that, the profit neutrality for a 30% drop in net sales revenue is close to 65%. So
Mhm.
that was the minimum volume growth that was required to be profit neutral. So first and
Mhm.
foremost is we had delivered that kind of a growth. A, now how did that growth happen? So that growth happened by execution. So when I say execution, it involved price compliance. Price compliance was achieved to the extent of close to 90% in about 6 months' time. And look, Animal, if there are specific interest, I can go into activities and sub activities, but at this
So,
forum, I don't want to
so
bore
Somu,
people.
no, I just have some questions here.
Yeah,
And
yeah, please.
Ranjan, I mean, feel free after my question, you can also ask because we want it to be interactive. See, firstly, I mean, like when you use abbreviations like OBPBC, you should
Yeah, yeah,
explain
yeah.
that.
Sorry, my
Okay,
apologies.
this,
Yeah,
yeah, just
yeah.
second thing, I just want to, because then I will kind of stop and then I'll kind of, uh, the second thing is that I have two questions. I mean, like, OBPC is one and two more. And after that, I'll leave it to you and maybe Ranjan can ask his question after that and then you can take all of these. So one is that, the second thing is that, see, I mean, like, luckily we are old enough to remember Amir Khan's ad, Panch, and that was
Yes.
actually a national strategy, right? I mean, it was not a, I would say, even a state specific strategy. So I believe that that was a strategy nationally. So maybe you could kind of explain that given that I mean, so I mean, like, that would have impacted all geographies. How were you special? And secondly, when you talk of even things like price compliance, price compliance is understood very differently by different people. So, these are very specific, company specific term. So you should explain that. I have two hands, one from Ranjan and from Anindya, and I'm just saying, just feel free to unmute and ask so that Somu can answer all these questions at one go.
No, so exactly, Reban, in essence, captured the question that, yeah, was this the period when, this Panch Wala story.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, was it, any? So, just wanted to understand, Sumo, if you were part of, that campaign on the five, and if so, then, some insights, and if not, then was it the larger, country strategy? And then, what was the basis of it that, you arrived at this number of five? And like you said, why did you want to bring it down from seven to five? Because per se, if you see, the difference wasn't great. So that I would like to understand.
Anindra also, I think, has a question. So I think maybe let me jot down all of them and then I can address it together.
Yeah, hi Somu. Nice to be speaking after so long. So I just wanted to understand when one a large company like Coke and a large brand like Coca-Cola decides to take such a step of MRP dilution, so to say, how does one there is always a risk of literage going down, and because if I was consuming a bigger bottle and I get something cheaper and I decide to move to the lower one and I don't consume two of it, so then the overall literage goes down. It gives competition a free hand to win share. How does one stop that, or how did you ensure to stop that, or what happened to the share at that point in time is the question.
Very valid, actually. So the easy one is the acronym of OBPPC, and my sincere apologies for using those jargon. And I had promised Anirban I'll like to make the talk non-jargonized, but it's simple: occasion, brand, pack, price, and channel. Okay, so that's the architecture that one is talking about, and we were talking about the price compliance. So how do you kind of create activation around all of this to achieve the price compliance, because the price compliance is very critical. There are rumors in the trade. How long will Coke go get into this kind of an initiative? देखते हैं, वो तो ये तो कुछ दिन का पागलपन है. So against that, you have to drive it, you have to sustain it. Plus there are wholesalers, which are the HVOs, and I'm sure Anindra would be also facing in his trade. They would go to the extent of disrupting. So you have to create profit stories, you have to increase the transaction. And that is why when I said, if you are dropping the MRP by 30%, by 2 rupees, to be profit neutral, you have to be 65% at the company level, at the Coca-Cola bottling level. For the trade, if you were giving a retail margin of 8%, you can't translate that on a subdued MRP. You have to give him the transaction. That is a key learning. अगर 50 पैसा per bottle आप दे रहे हैं, so you have to bloody protect, you have to jolly well protect that 50 paisa. Otherwise, you will lose the partner engagement. You will lose that retailer straight away. But anyway, to answer the rupee 5 thing, and that is why I had, logically uh, mentioned the results first, but my good friend Anirban has not always, but has many times, disrupted. So Ranjan, see, the way it happened is in early 2001, H1 of 2001, we rolled it out in Saurashtra. It took us about 12 to 14 months to consolidate this initiative in Saurashtra and getting a triple digit growth figure. I said, don't get misled. That triple digit growth figure was on a very softer base. But long story short, Saurashtra started kicking in close to 35%, 38% to the total state's initiative. Seeing the encouraging results, we got a special executive approval to roll it out across Gujarat. So that's how, we rolled it in Ahmedabad. There were 4 regions. Baroda was another region, and the fourth was, of course, Surat. When we had similar kind of growth in market, which was in year 2, and also in the other markets, which was in year 1, the division president got interested and picked it up as a national initiative, and then it was rolled out pan India. But hang on, even before it went as an pan-India initiative, the franchise bottlers, the Goenkas and the Ladhanis and the Agarwals, they were not convinced. They thought it is sheer foolishness of the bottling guys who will not be able to sustain it for long. So this is not going to stay. Okay. So that's how the Kobos, which was about 60-65% of the country, adopted this strategy. When 60-65% of the country adopted this strategy, it made sense for the central core marketing team and the division president to get a national media and a national uh, uh, campaign through Amir Khan, Thanda Matlab Panch, and then teasing and creating a lot of aggressive remarks and comments if you're not complying with the price compliance. Otherwise, just alone a state initiative cannot be backed by a national media communication, which creates so much of dissonance otherwise. Okay, so that was the progression, and that was the reason why I first wanted to say what were the steps and then get into the actions. But anyway, you
So,
guys are
so
preempting.
I mean, since we have spoken this, I mean, I'm actually a little, and maybe others may also maybe sharing my confusion.
Go
So,
ahead.
I mean, see, as an outsider, and this, as what I understood, and Anindo, you are from the FMCG industry, so please do interrupt here and please add your views. So, what I understand from what you're saying is that you went for this 5 rupees pricing, and there were some steps that you took to increase the channel margins, to protect the channel margins at the absolute level. And then there was a national strategy of advertising this, right? So I mean, like, so first is the pricing, then second is the initiative to protect the channel margins at an absolute level, and third is the national advertising. Am I correct about the sequence, or uh, I mean, like, am I did I miss out on something?
No, you are absolutely correct. But what exactly is the implication? So yes, the steps are absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's very interesting what you're saying. I thought that, when you drop your pricing from, let's say, 7 to 5, which is drastic. I mean, like, this 5 rupees was a game changer, in those days. I would think a company like Coke, which is actually a marketing company, would start with advertising it, and rather than, and then lower the price. I mean, like, this would happen. But what you're saying is that the price change happened first, and there was a I mean, there was a lot of lag with with the advertising of that. And
No,
something
Anirban,
special that you did was the protecting the channel margins at an absolute level, which is, I think, so the sequence was that.
no,
Yeah,
Anirban, that
Anirban,
usually
to
doesn't happen. Sorry, because usually the companies would try to do, test the water in a small area, and like
correct
rightfully Somu is
pilot, yeah,
saying,
Okay.
spot on.
it's not even a state; it's a part of a state. It's Saurashtra,
Correct.
one
Okay.
region. Yeah, so that
Okay.
gives
Okay.
there is a there is a trial. You make errors, you
Hmm.
learn, etc. That's more like a pilot test ground. Then you expand to one state, and then and then they got the might of the 65% of the Kobo owners, etc. All that is necessary. So Somu, correct me if I'm wrong. You may add to that.
Spot on, 100%. You are 100%
Right.
spot on. So,
Right. Great. Great. Great.
Anirban, respecting your status of moderator, let me still address, because I have to get back to Anindo, which I'll do in the next 30 seconds. So, yes,
Mm-hmm.
for an MRP
Mm-hmm.
to stabilize, at least there is a benchmark, and I would not quote that specific number in terms of numeric availability and the compliance, which are being studied both internally and by external agencies and things like that. But when that compliance happens, then only the national thing kicks on. Otherwise, the noise, the dissonance would be so high that it would create utter confusion, which can impact the whole brand equity, the brand value, and the company's functioning. So we can chat about it in greater
Sure.
details,
Sure. Sure.
Anirban,
Sure.
offline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me just
Please.
very quickly answer
Yeah. Yeah.
Anindo's point, and I understand, given his 12 years with Carlsberg, and now with Heineken, and prior to that Gillette. It's a very obvious kind of a question. So Anindo, you asked just like an Atlanta guy, right? I mean, if you guys are dropping production, MRP price, you will increase the transaction of a 200 ml, but how do you protect the literage, right? So look, when we convert everything to a denominator, which is rupee or dollar, whatever you call it, and when I said for a 30% profit drop, MRP drop, corroborating to X% volume gain, there is a very linear formula which will state what is the requirement in volume growth, both in terms of transaction and that translated to liter per case. Because at the end of the day, we always had to satisfy two bosses. One is the bottling head and another the Atlanta guy. So the bottling guy will be looking more at physical cases, the transaction, and the Atlanta guy, Coca-Cola guy will be like you, talking about literage, unit cases. So long story short, a 24 bottle pack crate converts to 1.06 units of literage. So we had to grow both the transaction as well as the unit cases, if that kind of answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. And Anirban, I think Nivedita has a question on the chat.
Can you just read it out? I'm finding it a little difficult switching between the presentation and I think what she asked is how long was it sustained,
Yeah,
this
how
five
long
rupee
was the
price
price
level?
point of rupees 5 sustained?
Yeah, so look, as you said, Anindo, so it was a pilot, and it was a pilot not only in a whole state. We did not have the guts and the appetite to do that. It's easy to talk. Hindsight is always wiser, and it's easy. At that point of time, it was only a part of a state. It was only 35% of Gujarat. Thereafter, when it was successful and when it justified the PNL, it was a sustainable initiative. So it became all India. It was picked up by 65% territory contributing COBOs. The remaining 35% of the franchise bottling operations also picked it up. Yeah, but look, I mean, in the last 20 years, you still can't stay at 5. You have grown in terms of inflation. So yeah, I mean, but it was there for almost 4 to 5 years. The typical price point was there till 4 to 5 point. And look, I'm not trying to exaggerate, or I'm not trying to do too much of a chest thumping, which indirectly it is still. But the fact is, India got into the radar of operations. Today, India stands as one of the top 5 volume contributor, which exceeds 1 billion unit cases in the world. It has taken over Germany. India was nowhere 20 years back. So
So
this
there's
was one
another
of the
question.
greatest initiative in terms of the transaction pack, the consumption pack, to get the Indian operations to this level. Sorry, Ranjan, go ahead.
So yes, this was a bold move. I understand, but I also feel that there was an even bolder move that you all undertook. I think in 2013, 14. I'm not really sure on the years. Is when you started educating in the consumers about the pitfalls of consuming in sugar-laden drinks. And so, how did that affect your business? Number one, both positively and negatively. And number two, again, the same question in terms of sorry, in terms of again saying, what was it that precipitated, undertaking in this complete advertisement blitzkrieg that you all think it was primarily also limited initially, or it started with India, or was it just limited to India? Wasn't I'm sure not sure, but if you could just provide some
Which
insights.
campaign, Ranjan? Which ad?
Wherein you started educating in the school going children about the pitfalls of the sugar laden drinks, saying this could be these, and I think this was being handled by again
Yeah,
infectious
yeah.
Shastri.
Yeah. So 2012, 2013 is when we embarked the platform of healthy active living. So this was one part of it, and it was very big, bold step, as you rightly said, because prior to that, we were not making any communication which was targeted to the children, never ever, as a matter of ethics and ethical promotion. But yeah, so one of the facets of the active, healthy living campaign was reaching out to the kids and not only talking about nutritional value, but also, you know, refraining people from, I would not say a silver screen mobile, but then, physical activity, the importance of physical activity. It was a global initiative, Ranjan, not only restricted to India.
Soma, why don't you? I mean, I know maybe we kind of derailed your talk a little bit, but why don't you just start? I mean, like, we have 7 minutes of the time, but we'll go probably about 5, 10 minutes over. I'll just request people to hold their questions. I think we have had a fair amount of interaction. Let's kind of go ahead with the talk. And Soma, in the order you wanted, and not in the order that I wanted. Yeah.
So that's fine, Anirvan. So I think it's one and the same. So yeah, we did talk about the results. This all got preempted, and look, I mean, such senior industry leaders from different fields. I mean, would anyway preempt. So yeah, we have covered most of it. That's what I mentioned about how it got, how convincing was not uniform and not overnight. How it took, how it was staggered, how it got into stages. And look, at the end of the day, I was still an employee of Coca-Cola, a general manager, and at best I would have lost my job or would have got a very handy recognition and a promotion. For a owner bottler taking this kind of a bold step, you know without getting very convinced, uh, would have been more than a disaster, right? So that is the reason why 65% of the company owned bottling operations adopted it, and the phobos, the remaining, were still kind of doing a catching up, just to test the hypothesis, just to test the strength and the power of the whole initiative, and the consumer driven strategy. So I guess, as I again said, very humbly and modestly, that brought India to a path of growth in the global radar. And I think a lot of credit, a lot of kudos and courage goes to the then division president, and even his boss, the group president, Mary Minnick, who used to look after a bigger territory, including Japan and China, and that is how had the appetite to balance off the profits which were subdued for India for the first 3 years, only to allow it to run at a faster speed once it had started, uh, you know, uh, learning how to walk, if I may call it. So yeah, I mean, on the hindsight, this is what the results are, and it's a really matter of pride to see India featuring so strongly in the global map of beverage landscape. So, can we move to the next slide, Anirban, doing justice to the time? So, again, irrespective of the activities and the sub activities and the initiatives, which were many and across the value chain, because when you do a consumer and 5 rupee, you have to do initiative all across the back end, the supply chain, the procurement. You have to protect that, you don't get into the steps of commoditizing, and you don't lose the basic value of the brand equity. uh, the logistics KPIs, the turnover, the turnaround time, getting the glass back. It is a two-way pack. It's not a one
Mhm.
way,
Yeah.
because the company, to cope with that kind of growth, can't keep investing in backends so fast.
Mhm.
So you have to enhance efficiencies and productivities. So those were the tasks. Those were the interventions. Capability building was another big one across the team, not only at the front end, but at production, quality, logistics, distribution, getting into more DCs closer to the market. Yeah, I mean, mm, and the biggest one was the self belief, the faith that how long you can sustain, and that faith right from the guy, the representative, the sales rep at the ground, the feet on the street, up to the chairman of the company. So
Mhm.
I guess those were very strong implications, and those were very strong learnings. That's about it, Anirban. I would like to summarize if you want to go to the second last slide. And as I said, I will skip RGM and sustainable business growth.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
This is
for
a
the for the for the young lads, for the young Irmans, and Ritesh had asked me what kind of a connect one can create. And as I said, my gratitude and immense thanks to my senior Irmans, fellow Irmans, and also who initially taught me in almost holding my hands in federation. My 2 cents to the graduating students, that if it is determination, if you are determined that you will crack it, you will crack it. Genuinely, you will crack it. You will get into the core of an issue. You will not stay in the periphery. You will cut across the clutter, and you will find a solution which is sustainable. I think that is 100% doable. It is achievable. Second is, it is important to be consistent. Like Anirban said, it's not how well you score in the last one day. It's how you score every day. Otherwise, you are not there in the team. And consistency is a function of tireless efforts. You're being precise without tolerance for zero error, and every time how accurate you are. Uh, as I have read somewhere and found out also myself, both are important, strategy and execution. But you can still do with a very superior execution and not that kind of a sharp strategy. But then, if your execution is not perfect, even the best of the strategy can be a disaster. So, uh, research says 83% of the world strategies have failed because it was not backed by a superior or an equal standard of execution. And when I say execution, I mean getting into the stencil format, planograms, visuals, especially in this kind of industry where research says 67% of the consumption is purchase driven. Converting the purchase intent. Uh, uh, Sorry, I meant 67% of the purchases consumption is impulse driven, visual driven. No one plans to go and buy a Coke. Uh, you get that trigger and you get into that consumption mode. Um, so, so yeah, I mean, all of these tools are extremely so strategy, it's culture for breakfast. Uh, in a second, anyone, I'll get back to that. And let me just come quickly finish. the fourth point, which
No,
is
no, please. I'm
extremely.
not interrupting. I'm not interrupting. Please continue. Maybe there was some change in in screens or something. I'm not very
Yeah, sorry,
adept
I
with
meant
Zoom.
Anindo, not Anirban. So I read
Okay,
Anindo's comment on the chat desk, and so
okay,
he was talking
okay.
about culture, as mentioned by Peter Drucker. But yeah,
Uh,
so the collaborative stakeholder engagement, that is extremely important. Like in this particular case, I want to mention about the partners who are the retailers, the trade partners. If they were not supportive of your initiative, any efforts of price compliance would not have succeeded. The the trade partners have to be convinced with 100% trust, with profit story which is co-created, not by your team and gone and done presentation. That doesn't work. They have so much of native wisdom, they have so much of inside insights, commercial insights and acumen, that it's very important to win them with 100% trust. Same is your board members, your shareholders. So a collaboration based on 100% trust, I guess, works not only in Coca-Cola. I think any company, any operation in any sector, across any industry. That's what I would conclude with.
That's great. Uh, I'm not going to ask any more questions. I think we are on time, but I want others to ask questions. I think there Nivedita has raised her hand. Anindo,
Yes,
if you have
sir.
any questions, and there were two things on chat. I didn't want to kind of look at that and disrupt my flow. So please ask your questions, and when all questions are over, I'll then summarize. And
So this is Nivedita. Really great talk, sir. It was very, very insightful. My question to you, sir, is with regard to your last slide, the challenges slide. Point three on that really caught my attention, where you spoke about, how a reduction in price or a potential reduction in price could lead to a dichotomy between managing your brand health and commoditizing the product itself. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little more on that as to how you tackled that issue and how you resolved it in the long run.
Yeah, a very very smart question, Nivedita, because the next chapter or the next topic was exactly on that, which is one should not stop with uh, this kind of a bold consumer-led strategy. RGM, revenue growth management, is important,
Okay.
wherein again one goes back to the pardon my jargon here, but occasion, brand, pack, price, channel architecture. So while you, after you have, look, this was a state when price compliance was a big concern. It was a deterrent. It was a, a gap, a barrier between consumption, the genuine real consumer, and your product. So once you achieve that, thereafter you have to keep strengthening your brand values. You have to get into occasions, you have to get into messaging, you have to get into extensions, you have to get into activations which enhance the brand scores. So for example, a food combo, uh, every time you eat, you feel like having it with Coke. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, it would be just like a bag of a cement selling at rupees 5. That used to be a very big challenge and a very big criticism, year 3 and year 4 onwards. The
Right.
the cooler planogram, the changes in the visuals, the promotions in channel specific.
Got it, sir. So, if I understood it correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. So once this price point came into place and it was actively being pursued pan India, did you then follow it up with the brand, or campaigns rather, like you mentioned, campaigns that would promote the brand health and create a more stronger connection with the brand and not stop there? Is that what you were saying?
So look again, when we first did the messaging, it was with the core brand, which is brand Coca-Cola itself. Once the compliance was more than 90%, and in some market even 100%, and then subsequently price compliance became the order of the day, because then we had
Yeah.
come from a stage wherein the retailer used to think it is their birthright to charge more to the consumers because they were serving a cold drink, because they had to offset the electricity charges for the cooler,
Mm, mm,
irrespective of the Coke company giving them the cooler on a free of
mm.
cost deal. But the stage two was wherein we got into, for example, promoting Sprite. So today, for your reference, Sprite is completely out of the price communication. It is on a clarity front. Uh, it is on an experience which refreshes beyond. It is on an association where you don't have any negative connotations of the dark color. Uh, so yeah, I mean, so these are all stages, Nivedita.
Got it. Got it. Thank you, sir. I think that answers my question. But I would have really loved to hear the next segment of your presentation as well. Like you said, you cut that out of it because of in the interest of time. I understand. But thank you.
No,
Uh,
thanks.
uh, any other questions from anybody else, or should I just summarize?
I just wanted to add a little bit. I think
Hmm.
this third point which Somu is saying about the
Hmm.
execution, I would like to just add. It's just for the audience. It's just not something like you launch a 7 rupee pack at a 5 rupee or whatever lower pack size and it becomes successful. Because I have been in that same year in Gujarat. I have seen Somu. There is
Hmm.
a lot of rigor that is required by the leadership to drive such a thing, and that makes it successful. So I had seen Somu. I think he's just being modest, not talking about that segment. He
Yeah.
used to be out in the early morning, reaching back late. So brand like Coca-Cola reaching so many, I mean, thousands of outlets, constantly doing market work with people, ensuring that every retailer, every nook and corner, every cooler, every product, every POSM being visible. There's a lot rides on the head, on the leadership. So those are lots of things that make this initiative like this successful. Otherwise, any small thing can go wrong. And I think it's a lot of kudos, Somu, to you, having driven that whole thing and made it a success. From where the state and then the whole leadership and country decided to put money behind it. So congrats, man. It's a great thing.
Yeah, Anindo, I think you have now reminded me. That's correct. And coming from a batchmate is very humbling. Thanks again. So, for example, when we rolled it after Saurashtra's success, we finished the market work and the market activations by evening, had a team dinner, and I drove up from Rajkot to Baroda for a 7 a.m. MIT. We used to call market intervention team. So yeah, it's critical to have a leadership to lead it from the front is important to create a mindset change. Thanks, Aniban. Thanks, Anindo, for reminding.
Hmm. I think, I mean, it's really interesting that, when I and Somu discussed it the first time, we said, Somu and I said, maybe 40 minutes is enough because that's what, people will have patience for. But Somu's talk has been so riveting that we are now, I mean, like we did start a little bit late, but we are at 1 hour, at least 1 hour, 5 minutes.
There was
You know,
hand. There was one question still, anyone? Please.
oh, okay. Please take it. Please take it. Yeah, I didn't
No, no,
know. I didn't know.
I couldn't see it, so I have to go to the chat perhaps to see
Anybody has a question? We can kind of take that. Can
it.
somebody just say that aloud? And
I would
so,
choose to know not to respond to
okay,
Subbu's.
fine. I see. So now, no questions on chat. Please speak or forever hold your peace. So yeah. Uh, so anybody can interrupt me, but I am now summarizing the presentation, and so I just want to say, that the talk has been extremely riveting. We have just covered 25% of the agenda. So it's just amazing. And I told Somu that, maybe we'll try and close it in 40 minutes because people's attention spans are nowadays just that long. But Somu made it so interesting. The thing which has not been said, but which is very apparent is, I mean, while Somu was talking about it, but he couldn't say it, but it's very apparent that Somu is the hero of this story. I mean, like, and things he would have done to convince his management to launch this initiative, which is, this 5 rupee pack, and which got rolled out all over Gujarat and then all over India. And, it's so interesting. I never thought history could be interesting, but Somu has made history interesting because this Thanda Matlab, this 5 rupees, those Amir Khan ads, which I understand now is the result, all those happened because of those steps that Somu took. And two things which I want to mention here, that it would not have been possible if Somu didn't have a very strong credibility with his management, because convincing his management to kind of launch such a drastic revolutionary method, revolutionary step, needed a lot of convincing. So yes, I mean, like, Somu is the hero of the story. Of course, he couldn't say that, but it's very, very apparent here. Uh, and other thing, I never knew history could be so interesting. I mean, some development, business development happening in Saurashtra 20 years back. I mean, how is it relevant today? But it is apparent that it has lessons even now. I mean, these stories are relevant even now. Uh, Thank you, Somu. Lots of things on the chat, but I'm not seeing that. So you can read that. And thanks so much to all the participants. And thanks, Anindo, because, I mean, like your presence, Ranjan's presence, because you are from the field and you could add that perspective. I mean, Somu chose me to be the moderator, I think, because he felt I didn't know anything about FMCG. So I'll not ask the relevant questions, but I completely derailed this talk. But I do hope that we have had a good outcome here. Uh, so this is all I have to say. Somu, I mean, last word to yours. I mean, like, just and then we can close this talk.
Thank you very much. Thanks to IRMANs, and as I promised to Ritesh when he mentioned to me what kind of IRMA ethos and connect you can create, I said if it is relevant for any IRMAN or any IRMAN ward, I can help them in any whichever way uh, for studies, higher studies in Australia. Feel free.
Ritesh,
Uh,
you have a question. Why don't you just ask and
uh, Thanks, Somoda, Anirbanda. What I was going to propose, because this session have been very, very useful and very interactive, we may plan for a second session in few months or weeks. A part like Somuda part two.
ଆଗେ ଏଇ କଲା ମୁଁ କହିଲି ହଁ ଦେଇଦେ ମୁଁ ତାପରେ
Uh,
ଗତିରେ ସୁଇଚ୍ ଅଫ୍ କରିକି ଶୋଇ ପଡିଲି ଶୋଇ
can
ଦେଇଥିଲି ମୁଁ
somebody be on mute? There's somebody having a parallel conversation. Please be on mute. Yeah,
yeah.
Ritesh, please. Sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, Anirbanda and Somuda, I was proposing that we can have a second session with Somuda where we can cover, uh, you know, the next 75% of what which was supposed to
Sure.
be. But of course, we will plan it out and we will
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
over it in few months, maybe, and it's on the table,
Sure. Sure. Okay. Uh,
All right. Thank you, guys. Cheers. Have a
Thanks.
great
Thanks.
weekend.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you
Thank
Thanks
you,
so
so
sir.
much.
much.
Thank
Thanks.
you,
Thank
everyone.
Thanks.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks,
Bye.
Anirban. Thanks,
Thank
Somu.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.